He still looks strong, doesn't he? Looks like he could do the swim again if he had to. It's 48 years since a determined 20-year-old, muscled for the challenge, did what no one else had ever done, swam out of the Soviet Union to Turkey and to freedom.
And so anxiously every day you wait for the right kind of wind and wave conditions, and one day comes and then you have to kind of pack your little goodies, your flippers, your basic documentation.
Where do you put those?
You put them inside your swimming trunks, in a waterproof packet. Yeah, you have to be absolutely a long needle like that on a string that you also put in your trunks, which is against cramp. Cramp, next to border guards shooting you or detaining you, cramp is your biggest enemy.
And what will the needle do?
What you do is got to pierce that muscle, and it sends a very strong impulse to your brain, which releases the cramp. So I carried that. You got to think about because if you get a cramp when you're 5 kilometers out in the sea at night, that's it. You're a goner. So you take every precaution you could. Here you go. That's Kalpashevo here.
That's your village, yeah.
I go back with him into his childhood in Siberia to find out how you get the strength to do something like that.
The town of Kalpashevo is surrounded by pine and cedar trees, so this would be very close to our house, to the second house.
So this is your village, huh?
This is very much our village. That's just a street next door. This is the view from our back porch, basically, backyard. And
So there's plenty of land there. That land is not really being used for much, is it? Or?
that would have been a potato patch attached to the house.
There's the wood is stacked for winter, I guess.
Yes, that's your very precious pile of wood. And occasionally you'd have kind of pilfering by neighbors. And for example, my mother, on a couple of occasions, to stop the pilfering, would put a bit of gunpowder into a hole that would be drilled into a log.
Oh.
Yes, and then when the neighbor would put it into the stove, there would be an explosion, and that would both discourage them from stealing again and would also indicate who the culprit was. Right, this is my mother and father.
Ah.
That's before I was born.
So this is the father who went off to the war and you never met him?
That's right. That's right.
Because he died when you what?
He died like when I was about a month after my birth.
Killed very soon.
There was basically like a huge slaughter of Soviet army in the early days and months of the war, and he fell somewhere near Leningrad.
Your mother does look quite stern.
Yes, it was a tempestuous relationship between those two too.
Was it?
Yes, but he sort of said that when he was leaving that even from my grave I'll be still looking after you. And my mother used to proudly say later on that was actually true, because I used to receive officer's pension after he died. This is me at the age of 7 or 8.
And your childhood was not too happy. You had a lot of trouble with your mother, didn't you?
There was, psychologically it was not too happy. I would certainly not say that it was generally unhappy, because I certainly enjoyed myself being a child growing up in the kind of Siberian wilderness. There was hunting, fishing, and that was kind of an escape from basically very dreary and impoverished domestic life, because my mother was a solo mother with 2 kids before me, and me the third one. And so there was tremendous amount of material deprivation. And so my mother was generally kind of like an angry and a very powerful and at times aggressive woman. And a lot of alcohol around. Thank God my father used to drink quite a lot, apparently, and my brother, was an alcoholic.
She didn't drink?
She did hardly ever, during celebrations only, but she never suffered from it. But, a lot of sort of domestic violence linked up to that. She said, I don't want you to love me. I want you to grow up and survive in this world.
Really?
The faster you grow up, the faster you're made into a survivor. That was your definition.
What was her name?
Marina. So that was Marina's idea. And any manifestation of what other people would call love, tenderness, affection, she would see as a threat. Okay, in this picture I'm probably about 10, and here on the left is my stepfather, Nicholas the first we call him, because the second one was also Nicholas.
You liked him, didn't you?
And he was a good man. Yeah, he was a boat builder, a fisherman, very competent man. Drunk too much, of course, but otherwise he really, had very good qualities. And he tried as much as possible to be kind to me, and would build me. At one point, he built me a small boat, a pair of wooden skis. Very much a man who was aware of nature and knew how to hunt and fish. So I kind of respected him for that. And he was basically kind to me, although he was an alcoholic.
Was he?
Yeah. Periodically, when he'd get on drunken binge, my mother would separate from him, and usually there would be division of possessions and all that, and I'd be involved in between.
What was his second Nicholas?
That was Nicholas the one. Nicholas the second stepfather was. Everybody was in some way impaired. Men who stayed behind and weren't killed or maimed, were either had some problems, like the first one was, I think he was too old and he was an alcoholic. The second one had a dry arm. But he was also a kind man in a way. He was very much a downtrodden man. My mother used to play harmonica very plaintively, and my mother would send him off to the hayloft, and he would just repair there, and you'd see these sort of sad songs pouring out from there, But he was basically, certainly never hit me or anything like that.
So, and you had no idea that you were living in what the world considered an oppressive regime?
Not at all. That only came much later. It did come to me, let's say at the age of maybe 15 or 16, when I was already in Tomsk, which is a university city, and you were able, as I was able, to get some forbidden material, or meet travelers who came from abroad, or listen to foreign radio stations. So I would try to get some forbidden literature. The general Soviet literature left me absolutely bored. So I would only read Russian classics, foreign classics, or things that were unavailable.
Tell me about the battle against the cold in the winter. How
Yeah.
did you survive in the cold?
Yeah. Well, you were very with cold, which some occasionally reached kind of 50s minus centigrade. So it was incredibly cold. You spit on the ground and it falls as an icicle. The roof would be covered by meters of snow, literally. And so there's natural insulation and a huge stove taking up maybe a quarter of available space in the house that would be burning in wintertime. And then that stove stays warm and keeps everything warm, including your food, your baked bread, children up on the top, and dogs, on the top shelf.
You could actually sleep on top of this.
You sleep on top. There's a big, large kind of a ledge or whatever on top. And as kids, we just loved that, because you go there would be a few fur coats,
And you'd lie on top.
and you'd be snuggling, and playing up on the top.
It wouldn't be too hot?
No, because usually after it's finished and it's right on top, so you're not like where the...
How do you say you had to go out to get the water in the winter? You'd be carrying back buckets in
Yes,
wintertime?
buckets, yes. But it was a major chore, and you had this kind of a wooden
Yoke.
cradle or yoke, yeah.
From what age would you have been carrying water?
From probably 5,
Really?
yeah.
And how far from the water to the house?
And then I would say 500 meters.
Really?
Yeah.
And how many trips would you make then?
You'd be making every day probably 10 trips.